take your friend Craig's word for it. When this fight comes on, flip the channel. Call your friends. Hit them up on a pager. I don't care what you do. We have a big-time fight in the welterweight division. Now, these guys are on the fringes of the rankings. It's the Dirty Bird Tim Means taking on Max Payne Griffin in a possible fight of the night. And if you consider this one, Max Griffin in the UFC, debuted at UFC 202. Tim Means fought at UFC 202. So for Griffin, he loses to Colby Covington. 6-7 in the UFC. His performance bonuses against Sung Kenan knocked him dead. I mean, he looked mean in that fight. He was on that 3-fight win streak that ended his last time out. Tim Means was also on a 3-fight win streak till he fought Kevin Holland his last time out. For Griffin, fight of the night against Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos. Knocked him down in the first round. Knocked him down in the second round. Didn't win a decision. That doesn't happen very often.
He got lit the fuck up in that third round, though.
He did. Tim Means in the UFC. So if Max Griffin is 6-7, Tim Means is 14-10 with a no contest, and he's got a performance bonus over Diego Lima. He's got a performance bonus against John Howard, and he debuted back in 2012 with the UFC. But for Means, Matt, as fun as the run has been, he still looked good at this advanced stage in his career.
He has, because he's not a guy who's always relied on advanced athleticism to really carry him in his fights, and that's why I do think his skill set has aged quite well. Now, you will not find a single person on the internet who will speak to you as eloquently as I'm about to about Tim Means' career. And I'm going to toot my own horn about this too, because I have a theory about Tim Means, and I'd like you to hear about it, because we predicted his fights for a good amount of time, but let's be honest, Fight Night Picks was not around for a lot of Tim Means' prime, if you will. He had a very good run in the welterweight division before 2018, the birth of this channel, but we've really only seen the fun action fighter version of Tim Means throughout this late career resurgence that he's had. And I shouldn't even call it a resurgence, just the late career fun stage that he's had. But will you agree with me in this when I say Tim Means wins every fight that you think he's going to win? Loses every fight you think he's going to lose, though. And that's the thing. Look at the opponents he's lost to. Nico Price, Daniel Rodriguez, Sergio Moraes, and he probably won that fight. And Bilal Muhammad, I gotta be honest, I thought he won that fight too, even though if they had a rematch today, Bilal Muhammad would beat the brakes off and it wouldn't even be close. But at the time, I thought Tim Means won that fight. My point is, though, everybody who he's beat, Ricky Rainey, Thiago Alves, Staropoli, Mike Perry, Nicholas Dalby, you can make a really good argument just to friends who don't know anything about the sport that, hey, Tim Means is going to probably win this fight. It just feels like when he does fight those guys who are looking to make their ascension up the rankings, that's when he does struggle at this stage of his career, and that's why I struggle picking this fight. We both wanted this to be a fight of the night on the fight of the night screen, and we always say this when we put a fight on that screen. It's not going to be one-sided. Like, it's on the fight of the night screen. It's probably going to result in a really fun fight. I think this is going to result in a really fun fight. But it's also a fight that I can't definitively say, oh, Tim Means is going to lose it. And when fights get fun, that's when Tim Means excels.
Well, if you want to play Tapology, you want to play MMA math, I'll listen to your arguments. And these guys have fought the same fighters before. They both fought Alex Oliveira. I mean, for Tim Means, there's a loss and a no contest. For Max Griffin,
different versions of the Brazilian Cowboy, if I may say.
There's also a loss. They both fought Mike Perry. Tim Means looked really good against Mike Perry. And in the fight that Max Griffin had, how did that fight go?
Not well for Max Griffin.
Yeah, it was a fun fight.
No, wait, it did. Max Griffin beat the brakes off Mike Perry.
Yeah, so there were Mike Perry fights for both of those guys. If you look at it, you can consider it they both fought Thiago Alves. Tim Means beat him and finished him in the first round. For Max Griffin, he lost by split decision, but 16 voters on MMA Decision scored it for Max Griffin. 2 scored it for Thiago Alves. It was really controversial by the end of it. But when you
was close, though, to be fair.
You do consider it at this point of their respective careers. Tim Means been the underdog in some of these recent fights. He fights Laureano Staropoli. He fights Mike Perry. He fights Nicholas Dalby. Wins those fights by decision. He had some back and forth with Kevin Holland in the first round of their fight, but Holland lit him up with the volume and the power. He ends up landing the cross that stuns Tim Means. Then he gets him in the front choke and ends up rolling. Gets the Dars for the finish. For Max Griffin, his last time out against Neil Magny, he drops him early. Magny rallies himself back into it. It's a split decision loss for Max Griffin, but it was really, really close one. Like, it could have gone either way, and people really were split. But when I do look at this matchup, there's actually some comparables that are fairly recent for both of these guys, and trying to break this one down. For me, Tim Means, the fight that he had against Sabah Homasi, I think that's a little bit of one. the fight that he had against Thiago Alves as well, just body type wise, fight style wise, where they're at in their careers. I think Max Griffin matches up that way. And for Max Griffin, I had his fight against maybe Mike Perry. Maybe that's the way that a guy like Tim Means matches up. Like, Perry's going to walk you down, throw volume, throw power. And that's how Tim Means can fight too. But I guess stances is kind of a difference there too.
I think if you want to break it down the most basic of terms, they both have a lot of similarities in their striking style. Both very boxing heavy. Means does like to throw a lot of elbows when he gets in close, though. It's something he's very well known for. Likes the clinch, likes the tie elbows. Will do sort of a single collar tie and then throw elbows with the other hand. It's a very effective maneuver that he's had throughout his career. And it's not something that's faded as he got older. Remember Jose Aldo in the leg kicks? It was always Jose Aldo in the leg kicks. But as he got older, he kind of got away from those. We see that happen a lot in MMA. Fighters will change as they get older. But for the most part, Tim Means doesn't fight in a different way than he did when he was younger. Like, he's going to struggle with grappling defense. He's going to struggle with takedown defense. His initial takedown defense, I think, is solid. I think when he gets into some of those chain wrestling engagements, that's when he can struggle. His striking, very good when it's volume-oriented. His deceiving power, I think, is you look at a 40-year-old who, again, looks like
any... 38.
Sorry, a borderline 40-year-old who Tim Means looks like any guy walking down the street. There's nothing that makes him exceptional. The thing is, he's really dedicated, has crazy cardio,
high
a really
school
good
wrestling
chin.
coach.
High school wrestling coach will not offensively wrestle a lot in his fights. Will use the offensive wrestling. He's, again, we talk about this a lot. Guys who are good offensively with the wrestling but struggle defensively with the wrestling. Tim Means is cut from that cloth, but it's just not a big part of his game either way, so I wouldn't expect a takedown attempt from him. I think Griffin's the more likely to go for a takedown, and I wouldn't be surprised that if Griffin's really struggling in some of those clinch exchanges with some of those elbows of Means, look for him to duck under and maybe try and take this fight to the mat, where Griffin, I don't know if he has a grappling advantage. I know we've seen Tim Means get out grappled, but I think these guys are on quite equal footing with where their jiu-jitsu is overall. Again, I favor Griffin with the overall wrestling, so it may be better with the grappling because he'll end up in the top position. But this is an underdog pick that I find very tempting. I feel like when people look at this fight, and I feel like this is why the odds are set the way they are, when people think about this fight, it's, oh, Max Griffin's on the come up, and Tim Means has already been there and done that. But when you really think about both guys' careers, I really think they're in similar positions. This fight, to me, we normally say this when it's a prospect getting a big win. It's, hey, a win might be the worst thing for them. Will you agree with me when I say this? Hear me out. A win isn't a bad thing for them, but a win puts them in a bad situation, which is you're probably fighting a top prospect your next time out. I think the winner of this has enough notoriety to go against like an Ian Gary, a Jack Della Maddalena, and I think that's how the UFC is trying to set it up.
I think the winner gets like a Trinaldo Muslim Salikov type, because for Max Griffin, his last time out, he fights Neil Magny, looks really good early on, and then he just about gets 10-8'd in the third round. For Tim Means, he got that kind of big name his last time out off the win streak fighting Kevin Holland. Did well at the start, and then Holland's pressure, his volume, and his power ultimately won out. Is Holland retired? I don't know. But when I look at this matchup, Matt, I'll say this before I mention the odds.
Wonder Boys.
Max Griffin has the perfect opportunity for himself in a training partner. Now, he's Marinobles martial arts. He's MMA gold. He's Team Alpha Male. For Max Griffin, his main training partner is Anthony Hernandez. So a perfect guy to get ready for that ground game. Griffin's boxing's a lot different than Tim Means. Tim Means is going to come at you with like odd angle shots, the elbows, the clinch work,
when he
the
goes
tie
downhill,
style.
though, it's nice.
But for Max Griffin, you talk about him going downhill, he keeps his head and chin tucked a little bit, and then he walks forward and throws boxing combinations, and it's kind of meat and potatoes, but it's not something that you see all the time just based off his stance. He's got a really nice body kick too, and his punches to the body are very, very good and efficient. So I like Griffin. I don't love his second rounds. Sometimes his third rounds are great. Sometimes they're Neil Magny third rounds, and they're not very good.
And that's why this is such a fun fight, though. Again, you can make a compelling argument for either guy to win by knockout, submission, or decision in any single round of the fight, and that's what always makes a really fun fight.
The odds in this one, Griffin is the favorite coming up. He's about a minus 180 favorite. For Tim Means, plus 150 in the underdog. I have no idea where these Tapology votes are going to be, so they're always a surprise to us there. To you, Matt, I feel like you had an early lean. I think they're going to be close. I'm going to say over under 57.5% Max Griffin, because I don't know if they're going to be 60.
I think they're going to be over.
I think they're going to be over? Oh, they're way over. So 668 total votes. We got 74% Griffin, 71% by decision, 25% by knockout. For the 26% that have Means, 77% by decision. Means trying to come through in the underdog spot. Yet, again, Matt, do you have the Dirty Bird to win? Is there some inherent bias regardless?
No, we brought up the Mike Perry comparable a lot for both guys. Similar opponent for both these guys. But I think when you look at the Mike Perry fight and the Mike Perry performance that both these men had, Mike Perry fights a lot more like Max Griffin than he does Tim Means. There's no argument towards that at all. Mike Perry and Max Griffin almost fight in the exact same manner. They are boxing heavy fighters who do not throw kicks, who go for offensive takedowns, who struggle defensively with their takedowns. If you just want to look at like the archetype of the fighter, I would say they're almost carbon copies of each other. Tim Means and his volume really gave Mike Perry trouble, and I think his volume is going to give Max Griffin trouble too, and this is why. I think Griffin will have success in some of the boxing engagements here and there throughout this fight, but the thing about Tim Means is that even though he is 38 years old, I wanted to put 40 on him, but you corrected me, he's only 38. He still does have good cardio for this stage of his career. That's an impressive thing to see from a guy who is pushing 40 years of age in a division that's not really known for its silver foxes, if you will. So for Tim Means, I do like the fact he's always represented the non-Jackson Wing Gym in New Mexico.
NHB.
I was supposed to say Fit NHB. There's a middle-aged woman who works his corner who's his head coach. Forgive me, I forget her name, but they've done a really good job with Tim Means. And I think this is going to be a great fight. This is a fight for the fans. I think it's going to have knockdowns on either side. The fact that I'm saying that thinks that it's going to be a pretty damn close fight, but I do like the overall output out of Tim Means. And for a slight underdog price, I don't hate the pick.
I like the storm of Max Griffin, and it just continues and it continues, and once he starts to roll and he figures out his distance, that's when Max Griffin's really, really dangerous. Look at his fight against Ramiz Brahimaj. He's hitting him into that ear, he's busting it up, getting the win there. Sung Kanan, he finishes him. Griffin was on a great roll, takes on a ranked opponent in Neil Magny, loses that fight. Tim Means fights a future rank guy in Kevin Holland, loses that fight, and when he's rankings adjacent, he's able to win out some of these matchups. But for me, I think Max Griffin, even though he's about a month away from his 37th birthday, so both guys age-wise fairly similar, Griffin's the guy that I'm going to side with in this one because, again, if you look at the numbers on a page, Means historically has fought with more volume. Means 14-10 with a no contest in the UFC. Max Griffin 6-7. I like Max Griffin a little bit more here, and I like what I've seen in some of these fights where they haven't been necessarily turning away the young bucks and the prospects, but I just consider it a little bit more for Griffin.
I don't disagree with anything on your pick, but I feel really strongly about this. I'm not going to lie. I really do think the winner of this is going to get fed to one of those next-tier prospects. I understand the Trinaldo fight would be a really fun fight. It's a fight for the fans, but I think it's tough to give Trinaldo somebody coming off a loss in a really high-profile fight. And I really do think the winner of this has a big enough name, because they're both known as action fighters, right? You're going to pay, maybe not pay to watch either one of these guys fight, but you get the idea. You're going to get excited for the fights that these guys are involved in, and I really do think that the winner of this fight, no matter who it is, whether it is Max Griffin like you said, or Tim Means like I think the winner of this is going to get either a Gary or a Madalena next.
We're split on the pick. Matt going with the Dirty Bird, Tim Means. I'm going with Max Payne Griffin. Main event. Kattar taking on Allen. It's a big-time featherweight matchup that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.